Good evening, everyone. This is Rebecca Sharuk, Senior Director of Alumni Relations at Thomas Jefferson University, and I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining us for our online Career Insights Talk, Failing Forward, Learning from Mistakes on the Road to Success. I'm really excited that everyone was able to spend their Tuesday evening with us, and with that said, we're going to get started. So first off, we had over 115 alumni join us or register for this evening's event from over 17 states. And we understand not everyone can attend an event when they sign up for it, especially when it's online. So everyone knows we are recording this evening's presentation, and it will be sent out to everyone after the event, as well as uploaded to our alumni YouTube channel, which is where we've recorded or archived all of our online talks since we've started. So there's a lot of great ones to watch if you haven't joined us before. Just so you know, a few of our upcoming alumni events for the summer. We do have the inaugural exhibit of the Readers Family Alumni Art Gallery on June 17th in the Alumni Center in Philadelphia. Images Along the Way, A Surgeon's Journey in Art. As well as those of you joining us from California, we have Jefferson Alumni Evening at Pageant of the Masters in Laguna Beach. We are starting planning for the fall already, so if you do have any events, ideas, or things you'd like to see in your area, please feel free to email us at alumni@jefferson.edu. And to see the full calendar of events that are coming up, we do over 100 events, alumni events in a year, some in Philadelphia, some in Florida, California, and more online so people can join us. And then without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Leonard, the Dean for the School of Design and Engineering at Cambar, who is going to lead tonight's presentation. Mike, thank you again for joining us this evening, and I'm going to let you take over from here. Oh, and just so everyone knows, we will be able to take Q&A at the end of the presentation, so feel free to ask questions along the way, and then Mike will be able to answer them. Mike?
Good evening. Thank you, Rebecca, and thanks to the Office of Alumni Relations, and thanks to everyone who's joining in tonight. I'm going to share my screen. See if this works through the joy of technology. All right. Now, to begin talking about this topic of failing, I would like to say that it's wonderful finally to give a presentation where any failure I make this evening might be viewed as a brilliant example of my topic. As Rebecca said, I'm an industrial designer, product designer, in addition to being Dean of Jefferson School of Design and Engineering in the Cambar College of Design, Engineering, and Commerce. As an industrial designer, I've designed consumer products, technical and scientific products, medical products, furniture, toys, office equipment, as well as products in a number of far-reaching categories. You might know that designers specialize in problem identification and a solution process once they find the problem. And our particular brand of thought is often referred to popularly as design thinking. Our design processes are geared to proposing solutions, to testing them, refining them, and developing products and systems, largely based on trial and error and applying our experience to solve problems. Not all of my designs were big hits. Some of the failures were due to design decisions I made. So with this in mind, you might say I've become an expert in the area of what might be called productive failure because many of the products were hits. I think it's also important for me at the beginning of this talk to frame the kind of failure that I'll address in this presentation. I'm aware that medical and healthcare professionals may experience a particular type of failure that most of us do not. This is what might be called high-stakes failure. In high-stakes failure, the lives and well-being of others are on the line. One's decisions and actions are often directly connected to the survival of others. There's a high potential for each decision becoming a final, perhaps fatal decision. In high-stakes failure, the opportunities to fail are usually presented moment by moment, where one single slip could damage everything. In framing the kind of failure that most of us have, let's consider what might be called everyday failure. I'm not implying that this type of failure is not
Oh, Mike, we lost you a little bit,
to live
so
up
I
to
don't
some.
know. There we go. Mike, you there?
I am here.
All right, you're good now. We lost you for a little bit, but you're okay now.
Are we back?
We are back.
Okay, sorry about that. See, there we go. First failure of the evening. The internet failed. So I'll start to say, let's talk about everyday failure. When you fail to live up to some standards that cause you to take a hit on your reputation, or you challenge your own sense of importance by making a mistake or having a project crash and burn. Everyday failure is often easier to take because do-overs are often possible. I teach in addition to being the dean, and in education we find that studying errors and taking steps to avoid them is at the heart of most educational systems, especially those where you have to blend knowledge and practice or knowledge and skill. Many failures happen in a process like the design processes I use to develop a product. In this type of failure, a mistake may only negatively affect part of the task. Replaying the process without the mistake may bring about a greater success. I'd like you to consider that it's often how we react to failure that makes the actual act of failing so very difficult. Typically, we humans react in emotional ways. We get scared, sad, angry, depressed, nervous, self-conscious, and a host of other emotional responses. We often put effort into reliving the failure, embroidering the issue, and detailing those dimensions of the trouble that we're now in because we failed. It can sap the strength right out of you at a time when you probably need to put energy into finding solutions and workarounds. In teaching emerging designers about reacting to failing, I encourage them to apply 6 types of reactions to the act of failing. In this presentation, I'll give some examples of how these reactions may help, and I encourage you to consider some examples of your own successful reactions to failure and see if they align. The 6 reactions are easy. It's reject, restate, restructure, resource, resolve, recover. You might ask how I feel qualified to speak about failure and moving forward from failure. As I said, I've had product failures in my past. Well, I'm a designer, and design is an iterative process. For every one product that hits the market, I've made many product proposals that have been made and rejected. Every project proposal is comprised of many different concepts, but only a very few of the concepts ever move forward into the proposal that I make. You could say that any one success in product development is the result of hundreds of failed attempts. To be a productive designer, you have to become very comfortable with failures. You have to find where the value it lies in the mistakes. And you have to find momentum in building workable ideas from the wrecks of non-workable ideas. Of course, this doesn't only apply to design. In fact, you can find examples of the power of these reactions to failure in practically all walks of life. This smiling, confident man is trying to encourage all around him to be brave in dire circumstances. At the time this picture of Winston Churchill was snapped, Britain was losing the war, the British economy was on life support, he had failed to get his government backing on practically every initiative that he proposed. At the time, he could not coax America into the war any more than he could coax Germany out of the war. So you have to ask, why is this man smiling? I like to think that it's because that over a lifetime of taking risks and relying on his instincts, and in falling down and in getting back up, Winston Churchill found useful ways to react to failure. This brings us to our first reaction, reject. Taking a cue from Sir Winston, it's important that we realize that we do not have to accept failure. At least we do not have to accept it completely. Does one ever completely fail or completely succeed for that matter? It's amazing how often we react inappropriately to the failure signs. We either exaggerate consequences or totally ignore the failure. Or at the first signs of a failure, one determines exactly what the measure of the wrong will be. It's often at that moment we decide, perhaps unconsciously, to project and concentrate on just how bad the failure will be for us. I should clearly state that I'm not proposing that running away or being delusional are appropriate strategies here. What I am saying is that you can work to respond to failures by accepting those aspects that are the most important first, and then ranking all of the other aspects in order of importance. Is there one thing that you got right? Is there only one thing that you really got wrong? On a scale of 1 to 10, how wrong were you? Finding the exact dimensions of the required outcomes and applying some sort of logic to the assessment is often the best course of reaction. When Wall Street crashed on October 29th, 1929, it was an unprecedented, catastrophic economic event. The Great Depression that resulted saw businesses, political, social, and cultural failures at a level and frequency that were difficult to sum up in a few words. The world had never seen them. A day after the crash, the big entertainment newspaper Variety found a snarky way of placing the blame and setting the tone, or at least the way they saw it at the time. If stock speculation was a Broadway show, it flopped. The energy, humor, some would say sarcasm, and directness of this captured in that one Variety report of the crash gives us the next reaction that you should probably consider to failure. Restate. Restating the problem can have several approaches. Like the Variety headline, you could elect to restate the problem in ways that help you cope and move on, or to change your perspective. You may also rewrite the script around the failure. Often, in the development of a new idea, it's the problem statement that is the source of a failure, not the proposed solution. I'll repeat that. Often, it's the problem statement that is the source of the failure, not the proposed solution. You may have been asked to do something that was so poorly framed, you were bound to succeed at the beginning. Or worse, you may have asked yourself to do something that was so poorly framed. Finding the right way to examine and define the problem is probably the best way to avoid a failure going forward. Here's some great examples. The adhesive on what became Post-it notes was actually supposed to be super sticky when it was developed. It failed. It's not super sticky. But the tentative hold that it has on things gave rise to a tool that we couldn't live without today. Try to do anything these days without a Post-it note. The popular and very useful lubricant, WD-40. By the way, WD-40 is named that because it's the 40th attempt to produce something that was actually a degreaser. That's right. It was supposed to lubricate, it was supposed to take away the lubrication, not lubricate. Their failure is actually the way we wonderfully silence all of those squeaky hinges in our house. It's an amazing product, but it totally failed to do what they asked for it to do originally. The packaging protection, not to mention that relaxing popping of bubble wrap, came from developers' attempt to make a textured wallpaper. That's right, they actually tried to develop a product to apply the texture to wallpaper. Imagine how noisy our homes would be if the wallpaper angle hadn't failed and actually worked. Developing and employing alternative problem statements is often a way of reclassifying failures into areas where they are great and unexpected successes. Store shelves are full of products that were originally supposed to solve a different problem. If the developers of those products fell down and did not get back up again because they had failed at one thing, we may not have these wonderful products today. Here's some notable early failures. While a junior fashion editor at Harper's Bazaar, Anna Wintour did a lot of wild photo shoots. But Harper's editor, Tony Mazzala, thought that they were too edgy and off base. And so Anna got fired after only 9 months, after which she became the fashion editor at Viva, known for its edginess, and then she became a legend at Vogue, challenging Harper's for the very market that they were trying to dominate. Brian Acton is a name you may not know, but he turned down employment by was turned down for employment by Facebook and by Twitter. He went on to found WhatsApp, and then he sold it to Facebook for $16 billion. Kevin Systrom had a number of failed apps that he developed before he developed the magic formula for Instagram. And then he sold it to Facebook for $1 billion. The neat thing to notice here is that each failed app that Kevin developed added another significant feature to the photo sharing app that we know and love as Instagram. Again, pulling the success from the failure. Bill Gates didn't seem like a shoo-in for success after dropping out of Harvard and starting a failed first business with Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. The business was called Traf-O-Data. While this early idea didn't work, Gates' later work did, of course, creating the global empire that we know and love as Microsoft. In getting fired from her very first job, Oprah Winfrey was told that she was, get this, too emotional and not right at all for television. Sean Combs started by selling drugs and getting caught, building a record label and getting slammed by both the industry and the performers that he hired. He then went on to planning big events only to have all of them backfire. Ultimately, he had to confront the flaws in his own character and grow up. And of course, he grew up to be a major media mogul superstar. Walt Disney was told that he was not creative enough by an early potential employer. He credited getting turned down for that particular job as the start of his own success and, of course, of the way he wound up hiring other creative talent as the years rolled on. J.K. Rowling may be rolling in a lot of Harry Potter money right now, but before she published the series of novels that she made, she was nearly penniless. She was severely depressed. She was divorced. She was trying to raise a child on her own while attending school and writing a novel. Rowling went from depending on welfare to survive to being one of the richest women in the world in a span of only 5 years, largely due to her hard work and her determination and not owning any of the other failures that she was presented with. Jay-Z could not get a major record label to listen to him no matter how hard he tried. He wound up making and selling his own CDs out of his trunk. And it turned out that it was his customers who bought the CDs from his trunk that actually demanded that promoters and record companies buy his music and have him join the label. And I think Steve Jobs is here just because you can't talk about American business or succeeding, failing, and succeeding without having a picture of Steve Jobs. So there he is. The stories of all of these people lead to the next reaction I'd like you to consider. Restructure. Sometimes failures are not the fault of the problem solver. You're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Occasionally, The context of the proposed solutions has not been explored effectively. Something's out of sync. Or the right idea might be hiding in the wrong context. James Dyson is a champion in the world of trial and error, experimentation, and creativity. He does it by building his own context. He's created a company culture where it's okay to fail as long as you keep trying new things. He has recontextualized invention around a set of principles which accepts all notions, even seemingly unworkable ones, as long as the developer shows how he or she has tried several solutions and evaluated them all. In this context, hundreds of ideas fail so that one succeeds. And it's considered a failure not to try 100 solutions, even for an obvious single answer. This has to work. After all, Dyson spent 15 years developing over 1,500 prototypes until he got the first commercially successful Dyson vacuum cleaner. Often we do not acknowledge what we do not know. Reaching out to others for their knowledge is hard to do when you have taken on the responsibility for solving a problem all on your own. Or sometimes the experts that you do have around you aren't the right ones for the problem. We've all gotten bad advice, misinformation, partial information on our way to try to solve a problem. Creating the right resource pool can be difficult, and having the courage and judgment to leave one resource pool and find another one that's just the right temperature for you is also difficult. I have a few examples of famous 20th century failures that suffer from the wrong resource pool or from an inapplication of the right resource pool. This particular one was called New Coke. You wouldn't think that Coca-Cola was an under-resourced company. They're really not. It's hard to imagine that Coke did not have smart people on staff and under contract when this product was developed. Salespeople had reported that some consumers thought that the original formula Coke did not taste sweet enough. That was the problem. Coke decided to change with the times. In this case, they didn't pay attention to some of their internal and external marketing experts who urged the company to avoid tinkering with the original formula and to combat the changes in consumer tastes with a new product, in something different. They wanted to capture the problem of the sweeter taste in an entirely different product that would then grow a different market and keep the existing one. Coke decided that that wasn't a great idea. So they didn't listen, and they took quite a financial hit, not to mention a blow to their image. And as a result, because the new formulation failed in the marketplace, some say it actually shattered the bond of trust that people had with the iconic brand Coke. The customers felt tricked, and some resource experts said that they would feel tricked when they were developing the new product. The next reaction is resolve. I often imagine that it was hard for Mrs. Thomas Edison to keep having Tom come home every day with the latest story about the latest set of filaments that failed on the way to the electric light. I can't imagine that was exactly scintillating dinner conversation. We're all glad, though, that she hung in there for the wonderful invention that we've used since he finally got the one that didn't fail. It's often referenced as persistence, Edison's persistence. And that's true, but I prefer to think about Edison's resolve. The result was expected. He was going to persist until he got it, but he had to commit to the process. So it's the commitment that was the success tool in this instance. He had to engage fully in a set of iterations that finally found the right filament material for the incandescent light, and he tested hundreds. Ideas have a wonderful regenerative energy, especially if you share the failed ideas with other people. Often, I find it's in explaining a failed approach to others that I hear the new potential solution coming through in my explanation. People who find success after failure often have people in their lives that see and understand the potential for success more than they see the dimensions of consequences in the failure. I often tell myself that I only have a sense of what is impossible because I know the many things that are possible. And I only know that I am unable to do certain things because I know exactly what I am able to do. In design, one sees that about every 10 years or so, we do the impossible and we expand our abilities in ways that we doubted before. Often, it's the components of 3 failed products that get bolted together to form the next big thing in the future. In closing, I want to remind you that you can work to manage the consequences of many of your own failures. Ford didn't go out of business when it produced the Edsel. As unappealing as people found it, there are some features in every modern automobile that were developed for the failed Edsel. You have electric windows, you have electric mirrors, you have a variety of things that were featured on the Edsel. Ugly, but it succeeded in delivering those new options. Microsoft didn't collapse when the Zune personal audio product line was a flop. They moved on to making some of their own products, and they made those products relate better to their own software. We all know that Apple didn't stop at the failed message pad. This failure helped them to realize all over again that customers expected Apple to lead through balancing design and technology and to establish trends, not to follow them. And Google didn't close shop or slow down for an instant when Google Glass failed to set the world on fire. They just filed it away for a time when geekware will become more accessible and acceptable in the marketplace. It's not the failure that often matters as much as how you manage the consequences or how you react. That will determine how you recover quickly from failing. I hope that this discussion of maintaining momentum and coming to grips with failure has been helpful to you. If I failed to give you a better perspective on how you may pull success from failure, I guess I'll just have to try again some other time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. We appreciate it. And I want to open it up for any questions that anyone has or any comments. So let's see here. Observation regarding rejecting failure. I've been in electronics, new product development, and product management for almost 30 years, and you develop alligator skin. Listen to reason, but don't take things personally. From Robert Rizub. Sorry if I pronounced that last name wrong.
You know, that alligator skin is probably one of the most valuable assets a product developer can have. Unfortunately, at times you wish you could shed that skin for just a moment and have somebody listen to immediate reason and see the brilliance of your idea the first and only time. It is true, though, you actually have to, as sensitive as you need to be creative, or as sensitive as you need to be belt up and keep trying to solve problems, you do have to have that armor you carry around with you.
So true. All right. Anyone else have any comments or questions? And if any do, oh, here we go. Failing your board exams, any help?
This has come up a couple of times here. Of course, we have the try again that everyone needs to do, depending on how determined and final some failures are. somebody was saying the other day that that's what other fields were created for. I'm not so sure I believe in that wholeheartedly, but belting up and trying again, or finding a way to recalibrate yourself. Is there something that you have done in your studying for the exam, for example, that short-circuited? You were so sure it was going to work. Go back through the process and take a look at it. But I do know that some of these board exam failures are catastrophic in many ways. And again, that's what my colleagues say. That's what some other fields are for. I'm not saying that that's for you.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more, but if any more come through, we can always send them along to you, right, Mike? If someone has something that they think of after the presentation.
That would be perfect.
Wonderful. And as I mentioned to everyone, this presentation is being recorded, so we'll upload it to YouTube and send it out, the link, and you'll be able to watch it again, share it, and all the other different presentations we have. Again, we're planning for the fall, so feel free to email us at alumni@jefferson.edu for any other topics or ideas that you might have. I want to thank you again, especially you, Mike, for leading this presentation tonight, and for all our alumni for joining us. And I hope everyone has a wonderful summer. And thank you again. And good night.
Good night.